Hi, you're watching Education in the Community. I'm your host, Denise Smith, and my motto is Dare to Dream. You are watching us today, and we have a wonderful guest. If you have the deep determination to succeed, you will not fail. So continue to dare to dream with us today, because I have a guest, Pamela Y. Price, Esquire. She's the Alameda County District Attorney candidate. I'm so excited to have her here. Pamela Price was raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. She joined the civil rights movement when she was 13 years old. She is a survivor of Ohio juvenile justice and foster care system. She graduated from Yale University with a BA in political science in 1978. While at Yale, she spent her junior year abroad in Tanzania, East Africa. I'm so excited to have her here. Welcome, my guest, Pamela Price. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you,
So
Denise.
nice to see you, and I'm so glad to have you on. You know, you've come a long way. Personally, I've known you because you've been an advocate for young people for many, many years. I would say a good 25 years. So I'm so excited to have you here on today.
Thank you.
I'm so glad. Can you tell us just a little bit about how you got involved with the civil rights movement?
I got involved in the movement, as you've stated, when I was 13 years old. And actually what triggered me was the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. I was only 11 when that happened, but that was pretty traumatic, not only for me, but for the entire country. And so I was a young person, and young people were involved and engaged, and we believed that we could make a difference. And so I got involved. I started learning more about the history of blacks in America. I wanted to know all about our history, and I wanted to be part of the civil rights movement. And then unfortunately I got arrested, and
How old were you?
I was 13.
You were 13 when you were arrested?
I was 13 when I was arrested.
And working with the civil rights movement?
Yes, I was, yeah. And got tracked into the juvenile justice and the foster care system, because at that time you could not, it was a different time. It was a very tumultuous time. And so the repression was very heavy against us for having the audacity to speak the truth.
Wow, that's amazing. That's an amazing story. What motivated you, really? Just like once you saw what they could do to you as a young child, tell me just a little bit, how did it motivate you to help women?
That motivated me to help women because I recognized that as a young woman that I was subject to a double standard, really. And I think for initially I was very involved from a nationalist perspective. But actually what motivated me was going to Africa and discovering in Africa how different women were treated and what the expectations were for women. And I became a feminist literally while I was on the continent.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We're lucky you made it back.
Yeah.
Because it's tough when you're in a different country and not doing as the people do, you know?
That's true.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. What has been your most challenging case?
It was a case representing a woman, a female officer out of Pelican Bay State Prison. And I think of it as my most challenging case because I had sued the Department of Corrections many times before.
Really?
I had been to Pelican Bay before, but that case was different. That case was a woman who was standing literally by herself, and most of my clients stand by themselves. And so we used to have a saying in the office, a poster that said, "Stand for what's right, even if you're standing alone." That officer was standing so much alone, and it really took me out of my comfort zone to be able to represent her, and it was a huge risk what we did to be able to do that case. Oh, it was a huge risk, and it was such a long shot, and it required so much for me to do so much that when we won, within 5 minutes after I got the verdict, I just burst into tears because I
I want to cry.
I thought about what if we had lost? I had done so much. So that was most challenging.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You know, you really are an amazing woman, and you've been an amazing woman for quite some time.
Well.
You know, it was almost like when you were born, they say God's gonna show favor on your life, and even though you're gonna go through struggles, you're still gonna come out victorious.
That's right. And God has taken me through so many struggles for a reason.
Yes,
for
yes.
a reason.
Well, they say you have to have a test to have a testimony.
That's right.
So you have
That's
a testimony
right.
from childhood.
I do.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's true.
One of your cases went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. What was that?
That was Morgan v. Amtrak, which was, again, only an act of God, because I was a small firm lawyer. Most cases are not accepted by the Supreme Court. Most lawyers never get to go there. And yet, out of all the cases that were up for hearing, the Supreme Court decided to hear my case.
Wow.
I represented Abner Morgan. He was an African-American electrician who worked at the Amtrak yard under very racist conditions in terms of discipline. The language that was used, black men were being called monkeys and the N-word, and one supervisor came to court and testified he did the shuffle butt dance, which he said the supervisors were doing at night, referring to the black men. So it was...
I don't know about the shuffle butt dance.
It was...
So tell me a little bit about the shuffle butt dance.
It was something that he made up specifically to mock the black men who worked on that yard.
Oh my God.
It was a pretty deep situation, and Mr. Morgan brought it to light, and he insisted that I represent him, even though I kept saying, I have no time, I can't do it. But he insisted, and he persisted, and because of his persistence, I agreed to represent him, and we fought that case, and we had to go through a jury trial, and then we had to go to the Ninth Circuit, and then by the grace of God, the court accepted the case for hearing, and so I got to go argue before the United States Supreme Court.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing, and we won.
And you won. It was even more amazing
when
you won.
Yes, it was even more amazing
right,
when
that
we
you
won.
got there,
yeah, right.
and then you won.
Right. Well, we claimed the victory on the steps of that
Yes.
court. We did. We claimed that victory.
Wow.
And when it happened, we said, okay, fine. So then we had to go back to trial, and then we got another victory. So that was good.
Wow. When you go back to trial again?
Yeah,
Why would you have to go back again?
Because we lost the first trial. The jury found that even though there was a hostile work environment, that it wasn't based on race. Race is the hardest thing to prove.
Yes.
It is.
Wow.
So we had to prove it twice.
Twice.
we had to
And you
prove
did.
it twice, and we did.
Yes, that's great. That's great. What is the criminal justice reform? What is that about?
So across the country now, we are learning, as the United States has the largest prison population, and we're learning that we can't solve our problems by locking people up. And so California is a leader. We can say with some happiness that in California we've passed a number of ballot measures where we've said we're not going to try juveniles as adults. We still have to deal with the issue of locking kids up for life without the possibility of prison, but we're moving in that direction. So we're reforming, our thinking has advanced, and so we have to reform the criminal justice system to reflect what we know. We know kids' brains and their ability to think about things and to make good choices doesn't even come into it's not even fully formed until they're in their 20s. So when you start trying children as adults, for instance, a 16-year-old commits a heinous crime, and you try him as an adult, you charge him, and that means he goes to adult prisons. And so now we know the research is that those kids that are charged and convicted as adults and placed into adult prisons, we're just destroying their lives. We're not. And it's not effective. And so it's taking a look at what we've done with our mass incarceration and developing prisons in this country, which is way past what any place else in the world. We have most of the world's population in prisons. So we're trying to fix that. And so criminal justice reform is turning that around. How do you begin to look at not only youth justice, juvenile justice issues, but adult issues? and make a change.
We need a change.
We do.
We need a change.
We do.
Boy, tell me just a little bit about what do they mean when they say the new Jim Crow? What do they mean by that?
Right. So when I got involved in the civil rights movement way before my time, my parents' generation and the generations before knew about Jim Crow. That's what it was called in the South. Right, our ancestors, our parents. I mean, my parents were very much aware of Jim Crow. They had walked away from that and were trying to get out of that. And basically, it was a caste system in the United States. It was to replace slavery. It was another way of classifying and holding black folks in bondage. And so when we say the new Jim Crow, we've looked at how we have never really overcome the legacy of slavery in this country, and in fact, it's fully reflected in our criminal justice system. If you look who's going to jail, who gets arrested. For instance, in Alameda County, we know that blacks are 4 times more likely to be arrested than whites. In Alameda County, black children are only less than 13% of the population, but they're 53% of all felony arrests. And so the new Jim Crow reflects that black folks and some brown folks and some poor people, but mainly black folks, have been subjected to a different kind of second-class citizenship through the criminal justice system. It's another way of enslaving, disenfranchising, and making black people second-class citizens in America right in front of our eyes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you're a wealth of information. You really are. And the fact that this is taking place, you're telling me that this is actually happening in Alameda County?
Yes, yes. Well, nationally it was documented by a black professor named Michelle Alexander. She wrote a book called The New Jim Crow, which told most people what many of us, and certainly those working in the criminal justice system, knew. If you go sit in any courtroom, you will see that most of the people who are being processed in there are black, and the folks who are doing the processing don't look like black people. But we are overwhelmingly the people who are being charged, prosecuted, sentenced, and imprisoned. And in Alameda County, unfortunately, yes. In 2015, Alameda County was one of only 9 counties in the state where the only kids who were charged as adults were either black or Latino. Blacks are 4 times more likely to be stopped. Most recently in 2016, Stanford University did a study of the practices of the Oakland Police Department and came up with some frightening, glaring statistics. Blacks are in situations where the police handcuff people and they don't even arrest. They handcuffed like 178 whites and 2,890 blacks.
Lord, wow.
Yeah, a traffic arrest, or even worse, they arrested 278 whites and 3,000, over 3,000 blacks just in a traffic arrest. So we're 59% or 50% of the people on probation in Alameda County, and 49% of the people in Alameda County are black people, and we're less than 12% of the population.
Which is going down quite a bit.
Right.
Because in Alameda County, we had quite larger numbers than that.
Right.
Wow.
Right. So our population is going down, but we're remaining steady when it comes to who's getting arrested, charged, and incarcerated.
Is it true that in terms of the 3rd grade, they look at the 3rd grade scores to determine how many prisons they're going to build?
Yes.
Is that true?
That was true, yes. That was true. In California, in the last 20 years, we built 22 prisons and 1 university.
Wow.
And if you build a prison, you invest heavily in having prisons, you got to fill them up.
So therefore that's why you're pulling the people over.
That's what we did.
Wow.
People got pulled into prisons. The war on drugs was a war on black people. We filled up the prisons. We overfilled the prisons, which is why we then had we had to have some propositions. The governor advocated to reduce the prison population because the federal court found repeatedly that the conditions under which we were housing people were inhumane, constitutionally inhumane. So we were housing people with mental health problems. We were over housing people. Prisons that were built for 1,800 people within 6 months of being open then had twice the capacity.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you really, when we talk about the mental health issues in Alameda County, and is there any correlation, do you think, with that?
Yes. In investing in prisons, we uninvested in education, we uninvested in services. I mean, there's only so much money. And Delane Easton says your budget is a statement of your priorities. And so our priority was to incarcerate people. So it didn't matter if you had a mental health issue or not. We processed people with mental health issues the same way we did people who didn't have mental health issues. And so a lot of what has happened, people got into prisons and developed mental health issues because they were being housed in ridiculous conditions. And then they got released back into the community where there were no more services. You know, I heard one police officer recently say that 70% of what the police deal with are mental health issues on the street. And yet we don't have that capacity or even that understanding in our courts. We're just arresting people and incarcerating them.
Regardless of any mental health issues.
Yeah, and the law is behind the curve because to prove that someone is not guilty by reason of insanity is such a high standard. And yet a person's mental health status and what they've been actually experiencing impacts everything they do. From the crime that they commit to their ability to explain why they did this, or to even be held accountable why they did it. We're holding people accountable who really can't be held accountable because they're mentally handicapped in that sense.
And is there any way that they could check, like if they are on medication or any of that, to check? Is there any? Are they doing anything like that?
Well, again, the services that were cut on the outside are not better on the inside. And so what we have is people going into, when you get arrested and you go into, for instance, a county jail, you don't get your medication. You have to wait until you are seen and diagnosed by a state-paid physician before you're entitled to get your medication. And so we have people who actually need their medication who don't get it. And then they may act out in ways that they wouldn't do if they were on their medication. Or it's just the situation is exacerbated because you got arrested in the first place because you weren't taking your medication. Now we're incarcerating you and we're not giving you your medication. So it's a vicious cycle once you get caught in there. And so it's important as we move forward when we talk about criminal justice reform, we have to have a perspective on what have we done and how do we fix what we've done. We have caused tremendous harm to people through mass incarceration, just thinking, let's just lock everybody up.
That's just not the answer.
No, it's not. And now we have to we got to figure out how to repair the harm that has been caused by this system.
Wow, that's just unheard of. You know, I want to talk about the fact that you graduated from Yale.
Okay.
And how impressed I am with that. Because how was it being in Yale, where I'm sure you were very low in the numbers in terms of being in college? Yeah. I'm sure you weren't part of the numbers of percentage.
I was not part of the plan for Yale. There's no question about it.
Yeah, so just tell me, like, did you have a hard time, or were you accepted because maybe you were the minority, or was it very difficult for you?
I would say it was a very different experience.
Experience.
I tell people, and it's true, I made it to Yale College from the streets of Cincinnati by the grace of God. I was a foster kid. I was living on the streets. I was trying to make it on my own. I went to an all-black high school, which was not bad. It just, that's the way it was. It was a segregated city and an educational system. So when I got to Yale, of course, I was concerned, like, do I really fit in? Am I capable? Can I compete at this level? And I very quickly found out I could, but that didn't mean I was welcome. It was a very small number of black students.
That was years ago. And you said in 78.
Right. We were, and for women, we were like the third or fourth class. So we were very few women. Now, on the one hand, the ratio of men to women was 9 to 1. So if I wanted to go to a party, I liked that part.
Right. I got you.
But Also, there were things about being a woman at Yale, which is what led to Alexander versus Yale, because women were being sexually assaulted and harassed there. We weren't valued as women in that time. So we had to fight as women. We had to fight as Black people to be in that environment, to be in that space. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Did you find scholarships? Did you find help? Did you find...
Well, I was on a full scholarship because
You're a
of
bright
my
young lady.
situation.
Wow, well, that's a
you
blessing,
know,
though.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it was a time when there was an incentive to open the door. So many people opened the door for me to be able to go to Yale. Now those doors are closed in so many places. But at that time, the doors were open. And so there were those of us, people were holding them open, and so those of us who could made it through.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me. Now, you were 9 most influential, with Alexander versus Yale, you were honored as one of the 9 most influential actors in title history.
In Title IX's history, that's right. Our case was the first case to challenge sexual harassment in education. I was fortunate to work with women who were pioneers, who were visionaries, who saw that just because the law didn't protect women at that time didn't mean it should not. And so they were women who looked at the situation and said, this may be what it is, but this is not what it should be. And so they moved in that direction. And I was fortunate and blessed to be able to step with them.
That's amazing. So you were always put in the right place at the right time, even though the circumstances were almost not in your favor.
Right, never.
That's amazing.
Never in my favor.
What about in 2002? The Price's firm made legal history in the Morgan, you told me about the Morgan versus Amtrak.
That's right.
So that was the one that that you really made history on as well.
Yes, and again, the odds were not in our favor. There were so many people telling me the Supreme Court will never rule in your favor, and you've never argued in the Supreme Court before. You have to let a man take the case and argue for you. But God had another plan.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That is wonderful.
Yeah.
Every year since 2004, Price has been named one of the top 5% of Northern California's super lawyers by San Francisco Magazine from 2007 to 2016. How does that feel? And tell me a little bit about that.
So in our field, you know, there's always the top this and the top that, and they compile these lists. And so in about 2001, they started compiling lists of lawyers. They started in Northern California, and then it's gone to Southern California, and now they have them in different places around the country. But basically, they take a survey amongst lawyers and ask them, okay, who do you think is, doing something really noteworthy in the field, and who's actually, pushing the law to the limits? And so they do that survey among lawyers, and they have a panel, and they pick lawyers. So my name got picked some time ago, and I've been fortunate that they continue every year to send me that notice to say, oh, you're a Northern California super lawyer.
That's great, because when you're being picked within your peers, that's special. Because it's very competitive. I don't care what field you're in. It's very competitive. So when your peers pick you, that's pretty special. That really is special. Tell me, what is your next steps? What is your next steps now that you've accomplished so much in your life, and you really haven't been here that long? You're still young and still beautiful. So tell me, just tell me, what are your next steps?
I have a little energy left, and in this moment, I have dedicated my life to going back into the criminal justice system. I started there 30 years ago in Bayview Hunters Point, your home.
Yes.
And now I'm in Alameda County trying to make a change. Part of the wave of progressive change that lawyers like myself, who have an understanding of what it takes to both be in politics and be in a business, because law is a business, but also have a vision for justice. They don't teach you what justice is in law school, and you have to learn it and live it. And I've lived an incredible life. And so my gift to this community right now is to become the next Alameda County District Attorney.
All right. I see it. I can see it, definitely. You know, you've accomplished so much. And I know you have so many stories. I know you do. But what I really want to hear is just like your most, I think, memorable case, like the most memorable case. I know all these, and we talked about a lot of them, but I just need to know like the one. I know you're proud of all of them. You have to be.
I am.
You have to be.
I am.
But like, what would you think would be the most memorable case that you had?
I have to say going to the United States Supreme Court was pretty special, and working with Abner Morgan and his wife Robin and getting to know their family. All of my clients were very special people, so courageous. I could not have done anything unless they were willing to stand for what they believed and willing to stand alone most of the time, and to give me the opportunity to use the education and the skills and the experience that God gave me to work for them. So yeah, Morgan v. Amtrak was pretty special.
That was the most special one, going all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. That's amazing to me. I just really have been enjoying this because not only do I know you from years back and know that where you started. I mean, I wasn't there with you, but I feel as a woman, I feel like you're such an inspiration. I really feel that you've been a blessing to a whole lot of people.
I hope so.
And you were also a blessing to my niece.
Yes.
When my niece was struggling.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that because you were an advocate. She looks up to you to this day. And she sees and she says, look at what she's doing. She's like, wow, that's amazing. But you gave her a job when nobody else would give her a job. And that was, oh God, that was 25 years ago, 20 years ago. And I just really want to say thank you publicly about that because that is just your personality. That is who you are. And you're very sincere with what you're trying to accomplish. So I believe that if you want to be the Alameda County District Attorney, you will be that. I believe that. I accept that, I receive it, and I know it's going to happen. So I look forward to just being able to congratulate you. So let me congratulate you first.
Thank you.
Because I know that I believe it. I believe it that that's going to take place. So I just want to thank you for this opportunity just to be able to interview you and just for you to be able to get out to our audience, to be able to really show who you are. But you know, when they say you speak from the heart, people could feel your spirit. So you spoke from the heart today.
Yes.
So I just want to end today with saying to you, again, if you have the deep determination to succeed, you will not fail. I want you to continue to watch our show because Pamela Y. Price, Esquire, was interviewed today. And believe it, watch, coming up, she will be the Alameda County District Attorney. Believe it, and please, if you can get out and vote, be part of the solution, not part of the problem. I will look forward to seeing you again the next time. Continue to dare to dream with me, your host, Denise Smith, in education in your community. I hope you got a lot out of this today. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it was so nice. Definitely. It's a blessing.
I'll come back.
Yeah.
We'll do another show.
Yes, that'll be nice.